Yeah, exactly. All right, good afternoon. The Secretary General will meet with 35 member states as well as the European Union this afternoon to discuss the Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA. We expect the Secretary General to brief the member states on the actions being taken to deal with the allegations regarding UNRWA, some UNRWA staff, and he will, of course, listen to their concerns. The Secretary General will again underscore the importance of the humanitarian work that UNRWA does every day in Gaza and in the region. You just heard from Sigrid Kaag, our Senior Humanitarian and Reconstruction Coordinator for Gaza, who met with Security Council members. That's her first briefing since her appointment to the post, and we will bring her back next time she's here. Turning to Gaza, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that yesterday the Israeli military ordered the neighborhoods of An Nasser, Sheikh Radwan, Shati refugee camp, Rima Shamali, and Al Janubi, Sabra, and Sheikh Jalin, and Tel Al Hawa in western Gaza City to evacuate towards the south. The new order covered an area of about 12.43 square kilometers, which is about 3.4% of the Gaza Strip. That area is home to almost 300,000 people since October 7th. Since then, nearly 60 shelters in the area have been hosting about 88,000 internally displaced men, women, and children. In the second half of January, our humanitarian partners continue to observe an increasing trend in denied and restricted access to northern and central Gaza. The reason includes excessive delays for humanitarian aid convoys before or at Israeli checkpoints and heightened hostilities in central Gaza. Threats to the safety of humanitarian personnel and sites are also frequent, but not only impeding the delivery of time-sensitive and life-saving aid, but also posing serious risks to those involved in humanitarian efforts. Meanwhile, we can confirm that yesterday the transfer of humanitarian supplies into Gaza through Kerem Shalom crossing with Israel resumed after 4 days of disruptions due to protests on the Israeli side. Our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed is heading to Washington, which is here in the United States, to meet with international financial institutions to discuss key elements of the SDG stimulus, the reform of international finance architecture, as well as the Summit of the Future. Ms. Mohammed will engage in bilateral meetings with the host government to discuss reforms of the UN development system. She will be back here tomorrow. Moving to Abyei in East Africa, and in the aftermath of this weekend's violence, I just wanted to tell you that our peacekeeping force there, known as UNISFA, is intensifying its efforts to protect civilians with patrols and monitoring focus on central and southern Abyei. Yesterday, our peacekeeping colleagues there paid tribute to the 2 peacekeepers who lost their lives in an attack over the weekend. Their bodies have now been flown to Entebbe, where they will then make their ways home to Ghana and Pakistan, respectively. I just want to tell you a bit more about the 2 peacekeepers. Sergeant Kerry Evans of Ghana was 37 years old. He was killed when repelling an attack by unidentified gunmen on our base in Agok, and that took place on Saturday. Sergeant Evans was deployed to UNISFA in May last year and has helped support the mission's protection activities. The other colleague was Spy Muhammad Tarek, was 26 years old, but already had 6 years of service in the Pakistani army. He had arrived in Abyei to serve with the UN just 2 months ago. He was killed on Sunday in an attack on his convoy while escorting wounded civilians who were going for medical treatment. And of course, we once again convey our heartfelt condolences to his colleagues, to his families, and to the people and government of both Pakistan and Ghana. The UN personnel safety is a top priority for the mission, and our colleagues at UNISFA are taking every measure to ensure they can continue to fulfill their mandated tasks safely. We are actively supporting efforts to de-escalate tension and call on local, national, and international actors to collectively step up and seek solutions at all levels to resolve the tensions. UNISFA will continue carrying out its mandate to protect the civilians in Abyei. And in South Sudan, the UN peacekeeping mission there says it's strengthening its presence near the border with Sudan, and peacekeepers are intensifying their patrols, specifically in Abyei County in Ruwang State and in Mayom County, which is in Unity State. A priority is to enhance security along the main supply routes, which is vital for the safe transport of humanitarian aid. This comes as our peacekeeping colleagues in the country reported that they are responding to an increasing number of incidents of cattle raiding, ambushes of convoys, and other acts of violence in the northern region of South Sudan. The mission is also engaging with local, state, and national authorities to ensure a coordinated approach to addressing security challenges in the area. And staying in eastern part of Africa, in Somalia, we, along with our partners of the federal and state government, today released the 2024 Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan, which seeks $1.6 billion to help 5.2 million men, women, and children in need. Last year, Somalia was hit by multiple shocks, including devastating droughts, unprecedented heavy rains and flooding, and the new displacement. Millions of people are also continuing to suffer from hunger and malnutrition in Somalia. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that more than 4 million people, nearly 1/4 of the population, remain acutely food insecure in Somalia. 2 in 5 children under the age of 5 suffer from acute malnutrition. Some 3.8 million people are internally displaced, and cholera outbreak is spreading in several areas. And an update from someone you often ask me about, but you haven't asked me about in a while, and that's Stéphane de Mistura. Looking at you, my friend. The personal envoy of the Secretary-General for Western Sahara, Stéphane de Mistura, is on his way to South Africa at the invitation of the government for meetings tomorrow with senior South African officials to discuss the issue of Western Sahara. There will be a time for you to make comments, but it won't be for quite some time. Lastly, our honor roll, and if I say to you, Rokuk, what do I mean? Rokuk. Rokuk. No, Rokuk. It's the initials for our 2 contributors, the Republic of Korea and the United Kingdom. Our quiz mistress, Jane Gaffney, has outdone herself. We thank both our good friends in London and Seoul for having sent their checks on time to make it up on the honor roll. We now have 30 fully paid up members. Michelle, then Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of UNRWA questions. Has the UN received the Israeli dossier?
I spoke to my UNRWA colleagues a short while ago. They have yet to receive anything in writing. We've seen, obviously, the reports in the press, but as soon as we've received something, we will act on it, but we have not received anything.
And you told us yesterday that the SG had met with the head of OIOS.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, their investigations can take some time. When could we expect to maybe see some preliminary results from that?
I think it's important that 2 things happen at the same time, that we get the facts, that it would be a thorough investigation, an unimpeachable investigation, and also that it be done swiftly to reassure everyone about UNRWA's work. So at this point, I can't give you a target date. As soon as I can, I will. But obviously, they are doing this independently. We want them to do it as quickly as possible, but as efficiently as possible. Mr. Klein.
Yes. Is the Secretary-General planning to ask for a broader investigation of UNRWA's employees' affiliation with Hamas? It's estimated, according to one intelligence report, that up to 10% of the 13,000 UNRWA employees working in Gaza are affiliated with Hamas. Is he asking for a more intensive examination of the vetting procedures?
Well, I'll tell you a couple of things. First, as you know, Philippe Lazzarini himself said that UNRWA would commission an independent review of its work to look at risk, to look at how it does its operations. So that's something they themselves want to do. While I think in any context, I don't know how you you examine people's thoughts, right? What is clear is that any action that contravenes UN principles, that violates our rules, is dealt with, and I think Mr. Lazzarini did it. Furthermore, I think it's also important to clarify something. Every year, UNRWA shares its list of staff with the host countries where it works, right? So UNRWA works in Jordan, works in Lebanon, works in Syria. For the work that it does in Gaza and the West Bank, UNRWA shares the list of staff with both the Palestinian Authority and with the Israeli government as the occupying power for those areas. And as far as I'm told by UNRWA, concerns have not been raised when the list of staff have been shared.
Yes, but have they shared this list with the de facto power in charge in Gaza, which would be Hamas, and have they asked Hamas for a list of their own members? Probably wouldn't
I mean,
disclose
think
it.
Joe. I think Joe, I'm not going to. I think you can imagine the answer to the scenario which you're laying out. Our counterpart for the occupied Palestinian territory is the Palestinian Authority.
But UNRWA works with Hamas, so that's why.
UNRWA does not. I don't agree with the terminology, or UNRWA does not work with Hamas. We have operational contacts with de facto authorities, like we do in every other place in the world where there are de facto authorities. Margaret, then Jordan, and then we'll go around.
Steph, did UNRWA give you a figure on the overall amount of money that's in jeopardy, sort of in terms of what's outstanding? Because it seems a lot of countries are saying no additional funding.
Yeah.
So how much has actually been received versus how much is still outstanding? And
Let
just
me
so we
see
get an
what
idea.
math I can share with
Okay.
with you all after the briefing.
And
I know
on-
the financial situation will be very precarious especially after February.
And I know on the website, they just have the 2022 donor figures up. I know we're just in January, but do you know when the 2023 numbers will be available? How soon?
We'll ask them.
And just one other on a different subject, the coup anniversary in Myanmar is approaching on Thursday. It's going to be 3 years that this situation is going on in a severe humanitarian situation. Does the Secretary-General, is he going to have a statement?
I expect we will have a more formal statement, but I think it is clear. I think we would echo the words that Volker Turk, his office issued not long ago, which is that, human rights situation is in a free fall. The humanitarian situation is desperate. We're seeing increased fighting, and meanwhile, we're not seeing the release of the political prisoners that we want to see, including the former president and Aung San Suu Kyi. Jordan.
Thank you. On Abyei, do you have any information who did the attack or behind the attack on the civilians and the peacekeepers?
I do not have who they were. As far as we know, they were men with guns. We don't know exactly who they were affiliated with.
If they come from Sudan or South Sudan?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Another question about peacekeepers.
Your microphone's not on, Jordan.
Peacekeepers. When do you think, why no peacekeepers protecting civilians in Gaza? I mean, why
Why
the
is
UN?
no-
I know it's maybe it's not your fault or the SG.
Usually, many things are my fault, so don't ask the
But
question.
why?
I'll tell you if it's my fault.
Gaza has no peacekeepers? I mean, to protect civilians. I mean, you send.
Jordan, you've covered the UN as long as I have. You know very well how peacekeeping missions are set up is through a Security Council resolution. And then, once you have a resolution, you have to find member states who are willing to send their men and women to serve under the UN flag.
My question, the SG ever suggested to the Security Council to establish a force to protect Palestinians? Because
he has not suggested a peacekeeping force for Gaza. Right now, our aim is for a humanitarian ceasefire, for greater volume and quality of aid going in. And our aim is for a political solution to this that would lead us back to the two-state solution. Sherwin Price, Peas.
Steph, what is the Secretariat's reaction to what could only be termed as intransigent language we're hearing from the Prime Minister of Israel as it regards the future of Gaza? Today he again said that Israel would not remove the IDF from the Gaza Strip. I wonder how those kind of statements affect the broader goal of the international community as it relates to the future of Gaza and more broadly the two-state solution.
Well, I mean, I think you can do the compare and contrast with what the Secretary-General has been calling for, what he wants the international community to call for. But at the end of the day, there will be no getting around Israelis and Palestinians sitting down and figure out a political solution. In the meantime, we want the fighting to stop. We want the hostages to be released, and we want humanitarian aid to be able to pour in through a systematic system.
If those negotiations that you talk about lead to a one-state solution, would that be acceptable to the Secretary-General?
It's not what's acceptable to Secretary-General. It is what is laid out for us in relevant Security Council resolutions, and frankly, what Israelis and Palestinians will agree to. Deji.
So, a couple of questions. First on Onwa. Just now, the U.S. ambassador said she hopes to see a fundamental change to Onwa. We know that the Secretary-General is going to have a meeting with donors this afternoon. What changes can the Secretary-General see in this very special, in this very institution that he might brought up in that meeting?
Listen, first of all, I think the permanent representative of the U.S. said also some very kind words about UNRWA and the dedication of the staff and the life-saving work they are doing. As far as the mandate is concerned, it is a General Assembly mandate, right? For its work methods, UNRWA, like any other part of the UN organization, is always willing and open to improving the way it does its work, right? Making it more efficient, doing it better. And, you know, it's one of the reasons I think Mr. Lazzarini will be setting up this independent review of UNRWA and how it works.
So the words are very kind, but the words from the Israeli ambassador is not very kind. Yesterday, he posted on his account, said that the Secretary-General has proven once again that the security of the citizens of Israel is not really important for him, concerning his appeal for donors to ensure the continuity of UNRWA's work. Any response?
I would just say that I think looking at what the Secretary-General has said on the situation in Israel and Palestine would lead you to a different conclusion.
Well, sorry. One last question. This question is not about UNRWA. It's about the deaths of the U.S. soldier. Today, President Biden said he had already made up his mind on how to respond to the drone attack on the 3 U.S. service members in Jordan. How worried is the United Nations on this incident, and it might even bring this chaotic situation to an even broader chaos?
I mean, we're very concerned about the exchange of fire, the kinetic activity that we've seen in the region, in Jordan, in Syria, in Iraq, and other places. All of this increases the risks of a widening of the conflict, which is the last thing we want to see. Yes, sir.
Yes. Steph, a question on Africa. It's not the Western Sahara, it's the ECOWAS. And the announcement of Niger, Burkina, and Mali that they are quitting the organization. First, how serious is it for the Secretary-General? And second, you always refer to ECOWAS when dealing with the transition to the democracy in the three countries. Now that they are out of ECOWAS, how are you going to deal with them?
Well, first of all, I think I've seen also what ECOWAS has said, which they remain committed to finding a negotiated solution to the political impasse in which the organization finds itself with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. My understanding is also it's a process that takes some time. Our special representative in the region, Mr. Shimao, is continuing to engage with all the relevant parties to help them get through this political impasse. I mean, ECOWAS, like all those sub-regional organizations, these organizations play a very important role in regional coherence and stability.
So how are you going to deal with the transition to the democracy in the three countries?
I mean, let's just say our call for return to democracy in those three countries remains the same today as it was last week before their decision was taken. Their issue is between those three countries and ECOWAS. We will continue to engage with the governments in those countries to push for an accelerated return to democracy. Sharife, and then Dennis, and then go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead. I'm just
You weren't looking at me when you said my name,
sorry.
So, Steph, you've been warning each day here. You come up and you tell us about the difficulties about aid getting through, and it seems evident that famine and starvation is actually unfolding in Gaza, and we can also see this from the visuals that are coming in from the Strip. Considering that there are so many obstacles to transfer aid into Gaza, and as these are confirmed by the provisions of the ICJ, the latest, what are your thoughts on the evaluations that Israel is employing starvation as a policy or as a means of war?
Listen, what the ICJ, I think, we've taken note of what the ICJ said. For our part, our focus is on increasing the volume of aid, increasing the volume of food that people in Gaza desperately need. I think the World Food Programme has been very clear on these issues, as have our colleagues at UNRWA, and to keep pushing for a humanitarian ceasefire. Dennis.
So in light of suspension of funding of several countries of UNRWA, how would UN support work of UNRWA if current finances dedicated to the agency would end, and if there any plan B in the end for UNRWA funding, maybe relocation of some funds?
Well, there could be some very temporary Band-Aid, but there's really no plan B. I mean, you know how the UN works. It's based on voluntary contributions. If the money is not coming in, the money is not coming in. We unfortunately cannot print money, nor can we borrow money, right? So this is why it is so important for us, and this is exactly what we're doing, to engage with donors, to answer all their questions, to answer their concerns, to express to them that we share those concerns, right? But at the same time, that while we're addressing these concerns very actively and very proactively, the humanitarian work of the organization needs to go on. Ms. Fasulo.
Thank you, Steph. Excuse me. Going back to the UNRWA staff that have been fired, I was just wondering, what the latest developments are in terms of the 2 UN investigations. And after a staff person has been fired by the UN, is there a requirement that they must cooperate with any kinds of questions or investigation of what they're doing, have done?
I'd have to brush up my internal housekeeping house rules, but there is a requirement for people who've been separated from the organization to continue to cooperate with our own internal investigations. Stefano, then Ibtisam, and then you. I'm still
Yes.
going on the first go around here.
Thank you, Stéphane. About UNRWA or UNRWA, I don't know how you say it really, because I hear it both. You will tell me. Anyway, but
Say it the Italian way. Everything sounds better in Italian. Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's UN, so it should be UNRWA. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, so before came this big scandal, I asked you what you were thinking about the UN Watch report about UNRWA that was specifically on something that they were analyzing a social where there were teachers from UNRWA. They're talking about thousands of teachers that they were. So you told me that you were investigating this.
My understanding is that Telegram channel that you're referring to was not an official UN Telegram channel, but was more for one of people looking for work at UNRWA.
But it looks like tomorrow this is going to be presented at the House Committee on Foreign Affairs in Washington.
Yeah, there'll be our colleagues at UNRWA, Mr. Lazzarini UNRWA has submitted a letter for the record to that committee. So I'm sure that letter will be released once the hearing is set.
So the firing of people and all is nothing based on that particular thing.
No,
that's something different.
Different things. Ibtisam, did you already ask a question? No. Then you may ask one. I'll come back for a second round.
Okay. Yeah. So my question about actually the U.S. and the execution of Kenneth Smith, and today different UN special rapporteurs
in Alabama.
Yes.
Yeah.
Issued a statement condemning the execution, but also for its cruel and for using nitrogen gas inhalation. Do you have any comments on that? Do you condemn it too?
Couple of things. One, I think I was asked about this already and expressed, reiterated our stand firmly against the use of the death penalty, especially under these particular conditions. Also, Volker Turk, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, had written to the governor of Alabama, expressing his concerns, which we share. You, please.
Thank you, Steve. So I have a quick question about Sigrid Kaag, UN coordinator. So just
senior
now,
UN coordinator.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, senior. So finally, we met her. So after that, what will she do? Where will she go? She's go back to Gaza. Could you give us the schedule?
She will be heading to Washington tomorrow, and then I think, if I'm not mistaken, because I listened at her stakeout, she's doing a regional tour. But if you look at the video of the stakeout, it'll list all the. I don't want to list them because I'll miss one, but she listed it pretty clearly. Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan. That's exactly.
Yeah, among others.
Her office is in Jordan. She's going back to Jordan.
No, I know where her office is. Don't worry. What's your question?
Okay, sorry. I just want to rephrase Linda's question back to you about OIOS. Does OIOS have any staff in Gaza to investigate the 12 individuals? And as she mentioned, like once the staff are leave, how can you relocate them? And I think you answered this one, but has OIOS any office in Gaza? And also the two individuals that's still not identified, like did you receive like their photos, and you don't want to put the names against their photos? How they are missing? They need yet to be identified, the two people from the 12 people, because you said 9 being fired, 1 has been killed, and 2 still not identified.
I don't have any more information than what we've already shared with you. I would encourage you to reach out to our colleagues at UNRWA.
And the last one is OIOS also will investigate the killing of that person, because there are 12, one of them was killed.
OIOS will investigate the allegations brought forward against the staff members that we've spoken to you about. Joe, then Maggie.
Yes. First of all, have any UNRWA or other UN personnel either offered or been asked by this House committee that's holding this hearing to testify? So that's my first question.
Mr. Lazzarini was invited. We're submitting a letter.
Okay, he's not decided not to personally appear. Okay,
yeah.
that's fine. So, I want to just go back to, you objected to my use of the word working with as a relationship between Hamas and UNRWA. So I'm going to replace it with coordinate, and I'm going to ask you, for example, has there been day-to-day coordination between Hamas and UNRWA in connection with the acceptance and delivery of humanitarian aid in Gaza? Has there been coordination between Hamas and UNRWA with respect to teaching materials used in UNRWA schools?
No. I mean, I think, listen, UNRWA has repeatedly addressed the issues of the curriculum. And I would encourage you to get all the details of them, because it's something that comes up over and over again. And they've addressed the curriculum of the schools that run from kindergarten through 9th grade. They don't do high schools. UNRWA distributes the aid. They run their schools. They run their clinics. They run their hospitals. Margaret.
Steph, Ms. Cogg said there would be a database about goods that are
Yeah, I guess
coming in.
that's, yeah.
She mentioned that. Do you know if that's something that's going to be an online? She mentioned it in relation to transparency.
Yeah,
so I'm just wondering if it will be online
I
and
can ask.
accessible.
I can ask.
Okay, and then the other thing, could you just clarify one thing in terms of the information that the Secretary General and Mr. Lazzarini were presented by Israel regarding these dozen staffers? If you didn't get this dossier, then what exactly did you get? Because the statement from Mr. Lazzarini on Friday just says provided UNRWA with information.
Yeah.
So what form did this
I mean, there are
information
two things. There
take?
was a meeting where the information was provided about the staff members we've been talking to you about. It was presented to Mr. Lazzarini, not to the Secretary General. Then in the press since then, there's been talk about a quote-unquote dossier, which is a separate thing, which has not been transmitted to UNRWA.
Sorry, but what was the, I mean, did they show them videos? Did they show them
They
photographs?
gave them
Like, what was the
information. I don't know the exact format, but they gave them information. Thank you.